What's going on, y'all? It's your boy JoJo Bucks back with another Geek Week anime update. Beautiful Sunday out here. Big dubs for the Buffalo Bills. Moving on to the divisional round. It wasn't pretty, and I'm not feeling great about next week. But let's get to some actual good news because it was a great week for anime. Start off with Vinland Saga coming back. First episode of season 2 is called Slave. We weren't really sure exactly where this was going to go going into season 2 with how season 1 ended. Obviously, Thorfinn gets taken away because he had attempted to kill the king, because he is no longer going to be able to kill, what's his name? Obviously the main point of the whole first season. But anyway, it starts out and you're introduced to characters we've never seen before. It's this guy Einar, his sister Lota, and the mother. They're sitting around. He's chopping wood, and his mom comes up and asks him why he's chopping wood. And he said it's because he wants to become a warrior, which he kind of just laughs off. The reason he wants to become a warrior is because their village had recently been burned down, and he wants to make sure that if they're ever to be attacked again, he is there to be able to protect them. They laugh that off, tell him he's lucky to even be there now. Look at you, you're surrounded by 2 beautiful women, you have a nice hot meal in front of you. What is there to worry about? Flash forward 30 seconds later into the episode, they are being attacked once again. They're trying to flee into the forest, and unfortunately, the mother is killed right away. She gets hit by an arrow. So immediately, their biggest fears come to fruition. Einar obviously is looking just in complete peril, has, everything is falling apart. He obviously, you could see in his eyes that he's in his inner monologue that he wants to fight back and, try to protect what he has, just the little family that he has. His sister gets taken as well because she actually did try to fight back, and then Einar is sold into slavery. Okay, Einar sold into slavery, big muscular guy, but just, he wasn't a warrior, didn't know how to kill. Now, he is on different slave markets. He tries to escape. The one time he's robbing this random little village, gets caught, and on his way out, he gets wrangled right back up by the slave trader. Now, when he gets wrangled by the slave trader, obviously, like I said, he's a bigger, large-statured man that's, perfect to be sold into some sort of slave labor, so figure he's going to sell pretty quickly, as terrible as that is. The older man from the first few episodes of Vinland Saga and the last few that was telling stories about how it used to be when they used to sail. He is looking for Thorfinn. It's the first time you hear Thorfinn's name throughout this whole first episode. So at first I was a little unsure as to if this was going to be a completely new told story or what was going on. That gave a little bit of foreshadowing to what was going to come. Another man by the name of Kettle comes up and is like, hey, would you like to work on my farm? At the end of the day, if you have no choice but to be where you want to have a good master, at least that's what he's being told. That way, you at least eat well and you're treated properly, you're not abused. So he's like, you know what, fine. I will go and work on this man's farm. The way the episode ends, lo and behold, Thorfinn has been sold into slavery as well. That's how season 1 finished up. When he got taken away, he was sold into slavery. So now we have this new character, Einar, and Thorfinn meeting up. Einar, like I said, he's not a warrior in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, Thorfinn killed so many people from the time he was a young man. But I would imagine they're not going to be slaves for long. But it was just refreshing to have this show back. I'm watching a lot of things where there's, magical powers, and superpowers and stuff, and it was nice to see something kind of based in reality, based in history. Mappa always does a good job. It's crazy that they are able to keep all this on their plate and really just, keep the quality up. Obviously, there's some difference in opinions on this ending of Attack on Titan, not the full ending, but, part 2 of the ending of Attack on Titan. Chainsaw Man was great. Mob did, but still, just very refreshing in general. Next is gonna be, I don't want to put the carriage in front of the horse, but I think this is going to be my early favorite for this season. Was what I had talked about coming out last week, which is The Fire Hunter, episode 1, Departure. Okay, so like I said, this is set up in a post-apocalyptic world where humans can no longer harvest natural flame, otherwise they burst into flame. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how it starts, it's set up so that had happened maybe 100 years or so ago. So they're talking about how this older lady is talking about how about 60 years ago, that's when they first started to really start rebuilding villages and stuff again. It starts off with this dog Kanata fighting one of these fire demons that they need to be able to harvest flame. The main character Tuko, she is the reason she went out to go get some medicine, somehow gets attacked by the fire demon. The fire hunter intervenes with his dog Kanata, which already a huge fan of the dog. Just like any anime, anytime an animal gets involved, you get attached right away. But the fire hunter ends up getting killed. And the fire hunters are incredibly highly regarded in all of the different kingdoms because fire is obviously in this show the highest level of resource. There's nothing more valuable because it's how you stay clean, it's how you stay warm, it's how you make sure that you can cook your food and make sure you have, just keep everyone alive. It is easily the most valuable resource. So after a brief scene of seeing the fire demon, Tuko is talking to what you first believe is her family. You find out very shortly it's not her family. So what had happened was her mother and father and her whole village had passed away. So she's now being taken care of by a lady named Akari, who has another daughter, and then there's a grandmother in the house. Okay, the other daughter clearly hates her because it's not part of her family at all. One more mouth to feed, and it really brought shame upon the family because she was the reason that fire hunter had been killed, and for whatever reason, Kanata the dog would only listen to Tuko, literally bite anyone else that goes to approach it. So to give you an idea of how valuable fire is, Tuko was out using a lantern to look at a grave and was immediately reprimanded because that's, it's a valuable resource, and she was just doing something viewed as frivolous, even though obviously pretty important in the grand scheme of things. So what they tell Tuko is that she needs to go back to the capital because there are still some semblance of cities. Like I said, it's been 100 to 60 years since they've been actually rebuilding some semblance of civilization here. So what she needs to do is get back to the capital. There's a collection truck that comes to these different villages about once every 6 months. They set up and sell goods and transfer things back to the capital, which, distributes and has most of the wealth. Obviously, when you have more people, there's more resources. So what they want her to do is go on this collection truck, go to the capital, return the dog and the fire sickle and the warding stone that she had taken from the fire hunter after the fire hunter passed away. Each of these villages is they serve the capital in general. So in order to avoid shame, and I believe they referenced some sort of goddess that, that's how they see what turned the world into what it is now. They're talking about how they have some remnants of previous technology and everything has to be relearned. All of the people who created all the previous innovations in the world as far as technology goes, whether it's, production or food, whatever may have you, those people are dead and that information and knowledge is gone. It was burned in fire. So the collection truck finally shows up. She has to take muku paper. Okay, muku paper is some sort of divine paper that is said to have the gods written on. Only gods can write on it, and she needed to bring that with the flame sickle, the warding stone and such, as well as obviously the dog Kanata, in order to be accepted on this collection truck and be able to get back to the capital. When they first introduce it, you're like, okay, so she's just going to go back to the capital and that's where our story will begin. Not at all. They tell you right away, as soon as she actually meets the people who are running the collection truck, this is going to take about a year or two for them to even get there. There's only one collection truck, and it stops at each individual village, stays there for about 2 days to open this market, receive whatever goods need to be transferred to the capital, so on and so forth. At the end, we're introduced to one more character, Kushi. You don't really get to know much about him. He's carrying a son, and he has a letter in his door, and he clearly lives in the capital. He receives a letter from the Okibi family, which you don't really get a straight sense of who they are, but seems to be some sort of wealthy family because after you're really barely even introduced to the character, it pans out to this giant mansion, which with the way the world was set up, you kind of find it hard to believe that exists. But basically, it's in one 20-minute episode. You already get attached to the characters, Tuko and Kanata. There's not many others that really stuck out yet because they haven't really gotten any sort of build-up, but the world that they're building so far is amazing. Completely hand-drawn, too, so in the outro, it's like a beautiful watercolor painting. Everything about it was everything I really, really like in a show, and they're just doing it the right way. You could tell it took them a lot of time. The studio was Signal MN, which is one I've literally never even heard of, so not from a big studio. Just a weird little offshoot show that I did not expect to find it. And one episode in, I can't wait to see how long it's going to go on, because it doesn't seem like a show that they're going to try to drag out. It seems like they're trying to tell a story, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds. Some of the more popular, My Hero Academia, episode 15, Tartarus. I'm gonna go ahead and say, aside from the biggest fight scene, this is my favorite episode of My Hero that I've ever seen. Tartarus is a prison that is off the shore that has about 10 floors. They station different criminals there of varying degrees on those 10 floors. It's kind of similar to, if you're familiar with Baki the Grappler, one of the most recent seasons where he has to go and all of those different high-level prisoners escape. But that's kind of the same idea. Different villains with different quirks that are deemed an absolute detriment to society are held in here. Even Gigantomachia, which also one little tidbit from it I found weird. They're not allowed to shoot missiles at Gigantomachia because Gigantomachia is actually a human, which blew my mind. I was like, what? A human? It's the size of a skyscraper. But anyway, right off the bat, you're getting introduced there. So after the battle was finished, there was huge losses on both sides. This last episode was just a recap and showing you the aftermath. Immediately, All For One directed all of his Nomus to go attack Tartarus, because that is where All For One's actual body is being kept. Okay, right now he's obviously taking control of Shigaraki, and that's how he's operating, but his actual body is in Tartarus. And what's happening right now is their minds are sinking, since it is the same consciousness of All For One. So that is how he was able to actually start breaching this insane prison. It starts off, you see these two giant guard heroes who were just discussing what had happened and all the different losses from Miss Midnight and such, that they had just taken to the attack, and immediately all of the Nomus start rushing in. Okay, it starts to unfold that because their consciousnesses are sinking, All For One's original body is able to use its quirks, even though it's, I believe it was 500 meters below sea level or something like that, on obviously the bottom floor, because it's, the greatest villain of all time. And his goal is to become a demon lord, which that's why to me this was the best episode I've ever seen, because of My Hero, that is, the stakes are exactly where I want them to be, and it feels like it's never been this way before, unless you were truly attached to the characters, which I never really was. So Shigaraki is still trying to fight and get control of his body. In some way, they're having some sort of inner monologue, and All For One is obviously telling him, "No, this is exactly what you wanted. As soon as your body is healed up, I'm just gonna go back into my consciousness." Which obviously, with All For One, it's trying to become a demon lord. There's no telling what his actual intentions are, but Lord knows they're not good. And then we end the episode in the hospital, just kind of showing the aftermath. Like I was talking about last week on this update, civilians are turning against the heroes with the whole story of Endeavor's kid being one of these villains. So outside of the hospital, as opposed to the civilians being out there ready to welcome them back into society because they just protected all of these cities throughout their picketing with obviously no warm reception whatsoever, because everyone's confused. No one knows exactly what's going on anymore. No one knows what to actually believe now that they can see part of this dark side of the heroes, which honestly kind of reminds me of The Boys a little bit, as far as getting to see the inside scoop of how these heroes interact, and there's the dark and evil parts of it. So it's setting up for an awesome end to the season. After this, they free a bunch of dangerous prisoners from Tartarus. Those prisoners go and they release prisoners from another 6 different ones. So immediately all of the losses that the villains took in that battle are null and void, because the army has already been regenerated, and now the resources are all going to have to be spread out, while All For One can regenerate Shigaraki's body, and we can see where their exact next attack's going to be, which obviously One For All is his main goal. So Midoriya's unconscious, Bakugo finally woke up, Endeavor's still unconscious. So really just a dark episode. There's not really, they were really just trying to set that tone of darkness that everything is looking pretty poor for the heroes at this point. You don't get to hear anything from Midoriya at all, which I like a lot. It was nice to have it just be darkness and not, I don't know, if a lot of my issues with My Hero were always that the stakes were never really there for me. You could always kind of see that they were going to pull out, and chances are they still will, because that's how these shows work. But for once, I'm actually sitting here looking at it like, they're in detriment and things are not looking good. So big episode there. We got, I believe 5 left for the season. So finally excited to see where My Hero goes. Last one I got on the dock is Eminence in Shadow, episode 15. It's getting a little bit more goofy. So it's called The Strongest, Weakest Man. Bushin Sword Fighting Festival. Obviously, Sid sees it as a chance to, be the Eminence in Shadow. He wants everyone to think he is the weakest man and actually end up coming up on top in this Bushin Sword Festival. He enters into it. Okay, so they use use some of his shadow magic and make him look just like an average young man, and he enters under the name Average Young Man. So immediately you're introduced to a bunch of different characters, different sword fighters from across these different kingdoms. Quentin, this giant guy, Anne Rose, I can't pronounce her last name for the life of me, but she's kind of seeing through the facade he's putting on, which has never happened before. But it's really all just build up. There's one funny character, the triumphant golden dragon. Golden Glitted, I believe is how you pronounce it. Hilarious character. Really, there's no stakes here right now. I believe what the whole point of this episode was just to introduce Anne Rose, if I'm being honest. But still entertaining all the way through. It's kind of starting to wear off. I don't know if it's just a down episode, because I have been entertained the past 14, but nothing really happened other than a few different character introductions. Aside from that, there's not really any big shows going on, other than I must apologize for not watching Bungo no Stray Dogs. I could not fit 3 full seasons and catch up yet, but next week I'm about 6 episodes in, and I mean, I like it, but like I said, I was so refreshed by watching Vinland Saga and the Fire Hunter show, just because of the animation style for one, and there's not all these crazy magical powers, and I don't know, it's been refreshing to see shows like that as opposed to what I'm seeing in Bungo no Stray Dogs, where it's all, celestial beings, and I don't know, but I'm still going to catch up. It's still the highest rated show going right now, so clearly I'm kind of missing the ticket on that, and well, why not put the time in and watch something like that if everyone else is enjoying it? Even if I don't, I at least want to be able to trash it here each week. So that's it for this week. I don't think there's any new shows getting added on for the next week other than me hopefully catching up on Stray Dogs. Aside from that, again, always like, comment, share, subscribe. We got the Dungeons and Dragons coming. We got more Animania coming soon. As always, thank you guys so much. See you next week.